Hello everybody, my name is Ruby and today I'm going to be showing a very underrated plugin in Ableton Live, and that plugin is the Effect Rack. The Effect Rack is very versatile, there's loads of different things you can do with it, and I'm going to put timestamps in the description of the video so you can skip to the part you want. So right here I have this little art melody. And it sounds kind of like garbage, but it's in Ableton Wavetable, so we're just going to add a couple effects to it, right? Just to make it sound good. I like putting ping pong delays because it makes it all stereo. And then, where is it? Hybrid reverb, I like a lot. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. So we have this sound, right? And it sounds all spacey and stuff. There's a frequency knob we can modulate there. So what we're going to do is we're going to group it using an effect rack. Now to open that, you can drag the effects rack in just by dragging it from your audio effects, or if you select everything, I think you can get, Control A, Command A on Mac. You can get everything and then use Control G and that'll group it or turn it into an effects rack. So now we can see it's all grouped together, and then we can double click it and close it all, and it's all this one device. Perfect. So now what we can do is we're going to macro some of these controls. So this button right here opens the macro window, and you can add up to 16 of these, which is crazy. We're just going to do 2 for this video just to set the example. So these macros are going to be knobs, and we're going to use them to change multiple parameters across different plugins at a time. So you're going to hit this little map button here, and then you're going to click on something you want to modulate. So we want to modulate the frequency. Then you're going to hit map, and you'll see it adds it to this list up here. Don't worry about those numbers, we'll get there in a second. And maybe next we'll want to modulate the dry wet on the delay. So I'm going to go ahead and map that. And then the dry wet on the reverb as well. So now it'll sound pretty garbage. You can see it moves everything, but if we turn this, you can see all the knobs move with this knob here, right? So it creates this effect or this useful tool where you can move all these parameters with one knob, which can be very useful if you're performing live, or if you want to record automation with a MIDI controller, or if you want to be lazy and do multiple things at once with one automation like I do. So now we're going to go in and tweak these min maxes. So we're going to turn the knob to the minimum, and we're going to set everything to where we want the lowest point to be. So I think that's pretty good on the cutoff. We do want a little bit of delay and a little bit of reverb. And then we're going to turn to the max and set our maximum. Now usually for dry wet knobs, I usually don't like pushing it over 50, that way the dry signal still has some presence. And that's something you can do with returns or whatever, but for now I try to keep it under 50 for the maximum here. And I think also an idea that I forgot, I want to automate the detune on this. I want to take, here it is, over on unison. The unison amount is basically the detune, so you're going to map it. So unison amount 3 on the minimum. Yeah, and then all the way up. That sounds good. So then you can hit this map button to get rid of the mapping mode, get everything back to normal. And you can see as you turn this macro knob, the plugin parameters move with it. And then of course, if you hit A on your keyboard, you can open the automation, and you can just draw on your automation here. Or here's a pro tip I learned recently. You can highlight this. Instead of doing a point, you can just highlight it, then right click, and then click the shape you want, and then it just does it super easy. And you can also hold Alt or Option on Mac, and you can adjust the curve here too. So that might be a little jarring. Maybe you want to bring it down. So you get my point. You can modulate or automate this macro to do crazy things. Once you have it set, you can name it something. I'm going to call it energy because it's making it super spacey and super like big. So, and then you can right click it and you can give it a color. And for the next macro, we are going to do some parallel processing. I think that's what it's called. I'm not entirely sure. But what we're going to do is we're going to add an audio effect track here. And I want to add some like subtle distortion to the sound. So what we can do is hit this button here and it's going to show our chains. So we're going to create a chain, and this is on every effect track, by the way. So if I hit this, there's the one chain that it's this chain, you know, the wavetable, the delay and all that. If you put in an empty effects track, there'll be no, so you have to create one. So I'm going to call it dry. I'm going to create another chain and call it distortion. So if we hear it now, it just sounds 2 times as loud because it's the same chain twice at the same volume and they're just being mixed back into each other. But what I'm going to do is first I'm going to put it before the reverb, that way the reverb gets the distortion. But I'm going to start adding some like, you know, distorting plugins to it. Like I like erosion a lot, so we're going to play with that. And then you can solo it to hear what you're doing. And then maybe a redux. And then let's put a vinyl distortion on it. And then maybe just a compressor to like tame it a little bit. Because you can see if by the graph it like builds up with that energy increase. Still sounds kind of weird, but whatever. So now, if we unsell this, you have this, but you can turn down the distortion from the original sound. And this is in sometimes more useful than a dry wet knob, because instead of mixing the two together, or as you turn one up the other gets turned down, it's just both right alongside each other. So now what we can do is we can macro this by right clicking map to macro 1, and then we can take this macro 1 and then map it to macro 2 on this rack, right? Because these chains belong to this rack, and we can rename them. This is going to be inner rack, and then this one out here, outer rack. So we're mapping the macro in the inner rack. That way we can map that inner rack macro to the outer rack macro, if that makes sense. So this knob's called chain volume for now, but I'm just going to call it distortion. And yeah, so this will, if I minimize these, sorry, I have Ableton zoomed in, that way it's easier to see on video. But so here on distortion, you can see we're turning up that chain. And you can, you know, color it, and then you can completely hide the chains. So now we just have our own plugin that we made by putting other plugins together. That's literally just 2 knobs. Maybe we want to automate this distortion too. Why not? So we're just gonna like turn it down like that. And now we have this really cool like morphing sound too. But once we have the rack, like we have it in a way we like, we can save it for later, which is really useful. So what you're going to do is you can name it whatever you want. Mine's still called outer rack. I'm going to call it like, I don't know, wavetable lead maybe. And then you're going to hit this save icon up here. And it's going to take you to your user library and then your presets folder, and you can call it that wavetable lead, but you can save it anywhere else if you want. You can make a new folder. You can call it, I don't know, just effect racks, and then drag it in there. And then of course you can, give it a label. So if you have a collection, you can have it there, and then you can drag it onto any layer. And you can see here, if I move it down now, we have our same plugin right here. And that's the power of effect racks. I'm sure there are much more things that you can do with them that I haven't discovered yet, but I encourage you to try them out, play around, make your own presets, and just don't be afraid of mapping weird things.